Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff Mom Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
And welcome back to another edition of Feminists Around the World. All the segments are running together. My titles are not working out well in my head, apparently. Anney, I was sad that you missed the last Feminist Around the World because we actually talked about an ecologist who saved Amazonian monkeys. And I was like, I feel like this is something Anney would have loved.
Yes.
And we would have had a long conversation about, which is why it ended up being very short. Because I'm like, oh, Anney would have loved this moment.
I would have.
I'll find another one. It's fine. It's fine. You know, there's so many activists out there that save so many different types of creatures, including humans. So we'll be talking more and more. But we have another one today that is also very fun because we have talked about our love for poetry.
Yes.
And today we're talking about an already well-known and accomplished poet. But she has already published her amazing works. I think she started publishing in like 2012, if not earlier. And she was already named Young Poet Laureate of London, the youngest to ever be named. And has been featured on numerous Beyoncé projects. But yeah, we wanted to take some time and praise her works and advocacy as well. And we are talking about Warsan Shire. And again, she's pretty well known. She is a Kenyan-born Somali-British poet who has been pushing boundaries with her beautiful works. Again with Beyoncé. I'm like, okay, cool. But we did want to talk about her on our segment because she is obviously someone who is doing some amazing stuff. And you know how we feel about giving flowers to those who are still here with us. That's what we're going to do. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Shire was born in Kenya to her Somali parents. She and her family moved to London when she was 1 year old. From there, Shire would go on to get her Bachelor's of Arts in Creative Writing, and today is now one of the biggest poets in our modern history. She gave an interview to Vogue in 2022 talking about her process and her works, and the interview talked about the beginning of her poetry career and her influences, including Jacob Sam LaRose, who is a famous poet, writer, and educator from London as well. She says in Vogue, as a teenager, I lived in Northwest London with my family and ended up joining a local youth club nearby. It had zero funding, but an older Jamaican gentleman ran it, and he always kept us in the loop about any free events. He invited me to a workshop one day, and that's when I met Jacob. He absolutely changed my life. There's no way I would be speaking to you right now if I had never met him. At that point, I had thought about writing, but only in terms of novels. Poetry just felt totally inaccessible, but Jacob had us write a poem about our experiences of gentrification in London. Right at the end of the workshop, he told me to get in touch if I had any other pieces for him to read, so I did. I bombarded him with emails with all sorts of crap I had written. That led to me joining his Barbican Young Poet scheme, where I met Nee Parks, who published my first works through Flipdie. I owe him so much.
And she goes on talking about her writing as a young teenage poet. I turned out all sorts of rubbish, though. I remember it being like, here's my emotions on paper. I did write every day, but it felt less like discipline, more like a lifetime for me. It became sort of therapeutic. You write what you know, and as a teenager, that meant my family and other Somalis in our community still reckoning with the war.
I feel like, though we did not have that experience of war, you and I talked many a times about, as teenagers, we sure did write a lot of woes. And yeah, it was a lot of teenage angst. So this made me feel a little better. Even though I'm sure her poetry was way beyond our scale, it still was like, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
If you ever dabbled any poetry as a teen, you know this feeling.
Yes. Yes.
I appreciated that. I was like, oh, I'm going to put this in there. And her work has been recognized as a powerful look into society, community, refugees, race, and gender. And in an interview for The Guardian, Shire spoke with award-winning author Bernardine Evaristo for her book. In it, she talked about her family and their influences in her writing. Shire says, my mom has always been this natural feminist. Even though she spent her life as a housewife and didn't really get to go to school, she always relished seeing me be free. My family is a Muslim family, so at times when I would be told, hey, you need to wear a hijab, it would be my mom who'd be like, she'll do what she wants to. So that just made me feel formidable. My dad's a writer, and he was the reason why we had to leave Somalia. He was writing this book about the corruption in the Somali government. There were threats and intimidation, and ultimately we had to leave just before the war broke out. He was the first person that introduced me to the idea of being Afrocentric, Pan-Africanism, and the history of Somalia. He made me feel really proud to be Black from a very young age. And he also put in me the importance of writing and sharing your stories. So that, mixed with growing up with a backdrop of a civil war and constantly looking after and meeting traumatized family that had just come from war, all of that came together to create in me this urgency to write.
Right. And her work has been an influence for so many, including Beyoncé. In 2016, Beyoncé collaborated with Shire for her record-breaking album, Lemonade. Though she had already made a name for herself with her works and words, her works for the album only continued to expand her popularity. Here's what she had to say to Reese, though, about being contacted by Beyoncé. So the Beyoncé thing happened very randomly, honestly. I opened up my email, and there was one from Parkwood, which is Beyoncé's company. I thought somebody was pranking me, but it turned out to be actually them. They thought I was in London, and I said, actually, coincidentally, I happen to be in LA right now. So it all happened very quickly. I woke up that morning, and that afternoon I was sitting with Beyoncé listening to the album Lemonade. I grew up listening to Destiny's Child and Beyoncé, so it was very surreal. I was very starstruck. I thought, finally, the mental health issue that my mama has always talked about on my dad's side of the family had kicked in. And what a beautiful psychosis this is. Of all the ways to lose my mind, this is a great one. And then it turned out to be real. It was a really beautiful experience in that she made me feel just safe and special. She was very, very kind to me, and she's really sweet. She sent me flowers after the births of both of my children. But yeah, then I just went back to writing. I don't really think about it much. That's amazing. After working with Beyoncé, Shire stepped out of the limelight and just continued her writing, as she said. In 2022, she released her latest book of poems, Blessed the Daughter Raised by a Voice in Her Head, Poems.
Right. She actually, she kind of stepped out. No one really heard from her. She didn't publish much, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. Most people would have been like, boom, I'm going to cash in. Again, she was already well-known and noted for her work. So A, maybe she was used to it. B, a lot of people who worked with her talk about her being really gracious and understanding and not allowing things like this to go to her head. She kind of lived that, in that she really did not necessarily care to be a note for her, as in, like, she didn't ride that wave. She's just like, yeah, that happened. Next.
Yeah.
While most of us would be like, I worked for Beyoncé. Like, I would make a t-shirt probably, you know?
Right.
And of course, with all of her incredible works, she has earned many awards and accolades, including the Young Poet Laureate of London, which we mentioned before. But also in 2013, she earned Brunel University's first African Poetry Prize, was a poet in residence of Queensland, Australia, was elected Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature in 2018. And then her books, which I think she's published about 3 or 4, have been on different lists, short lists for fellows and recognition for her amazing work. And with that, we're going to leave you with a bit of her works, and there's many. You should definitely go look at her books. I think she actually did a whole audio book of her works. I believe she's the one that's recording it, which we love to hear. But here's a little piece of her work. The year of letting go, of understanding loss, grace, of the word no, and also being able to say you are not kind. The year of humanity, humility, when the whole world couldn't get out of bed. Everyone I've met this year says the same thing. You are easy to be around. How do you do that? The year I broke open and dug out all the rot with own hands. The year I learned small talk and how to smile at strangers. The year I understood that I am my best when I reach out and ask, do you want to be my friend? The year of sugar, everywhere, softness, sweetness. Honey, honey. The year of being alone and learning how much I like it. The year of hugging people I don't know because I want to know them. The year I made peace and love right here. That's so good.
It's beautiful. And I relate. I'm like, yes, yes.
It is so relatable.
It really is. Oh, we do love poetry over here on Sminty, so it's always a delight when we get to read some, even though it's not our expertise. Our teenage selves perhaps were not meant to be poets.
We're not.
No.
We're going to leave those alone.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I say this every time, but next time I go home, I'm going to find my book of poetry and I will read one on here and it will be hilarious for everyone involved.
Oh, goodness.
But the problem is you won't see all the butterflies on the side.
Oh, I didn't draw. I knew better. I knew my limits.
You were smart. You knew your limits. Oh, well. All right. Well, in the meantime, we will be obviously, as always, watching to see what happens next in this story. I'm sure we'll have an update. But in the meantime, if there's anything we missed, or if there's anyone you think we should talk about in this segment, you can contact us. You can email us at stephanieamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Mom Never Told You. We have a TeePublic store and we have a book. There's no poetry in it, I don't think. But hey, you can get it.
I'm wrecking my brain now.
Nevertheless, at stuffyoushouldreadbooks.com or wherever you get your books or audiobooks. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your favorite shows.